You are now tuning into the Resilient Podcast. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. I am Rob Aurelius, your host of the Resilient Podcast, and welcome to episode 13. Episode 12 was about 2 weeks ago when we filmed it live from Atlanta, Georgia, while I was out there on a business trip for a WWE PLE called Bad Blood. And my guest at that episode was none other than DJ Danny Ocean, who is a new friend, a new associate, and someone that eventually the Resilient Podcast, ARCG Media, and the Resilience Tribune will be collaborating with. So in that episode 12, Danny and I spoke about peace, finding peace through resilience. And before I get into episode 13, where we're going to talk about resentment during the healing stage when dealing, with a breakup, I wanted to address a few things. So first and foremost, because I didn't get a chance to say it before, happy Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It is Friday. Today is the first game of the World Series, and I am a Yankee fan because I'm from New York. And I'm rooting for the Yankees. And I'm excited. But also, this evening, I will be headed to the Barclays Center with my videographer / photographer, Diego, for an episode of WWE SmackDown. Tonight, SmackDown's going to be great. So I wanted to talk about a few things about Atlanta during that trip. And, it is officially now 8 months that my ex-girlfriend and I have been separated. It's been 8 months since we broke up, and it's been 7 months since I've heard from her. Unfortunately, a few days ago, I was looking at this paper work that I had filled out several months back. I want to say ideally around, November or December of last year. And this paperwork was pretty much for, I know I've told you guys in the past to please bear with me with these episodes because these topics and these subjects that I bring up from time to time can be very sensitive for me. So the paperwork that I'm referring to was paperwork that I'd signed for what was supposed to be the proposed engagement to my ex-girlfriend. I was supposed to propose to her on November 20th of this year, 2024. The reason for that is because her birthday is November 19th. And originally, and I'm not sure if I've ever shared this with anyone here on the podcast, I had originally planned to propose to her at a concert for her favorite group, BTS. Unfortunately, when I reached out to the people in charge of BTS, their management and whatnot, I had asked them when is the next time that you guys have a concert in the US, and where would it be? And they responded back to me, not right away, but they responded back to me after a period of time and said BTS doesn't have any plans to have a concert in 2024. And then I asked them, okay, that's fine. What about 2025? And they said that the reason why they couldn't give me an immediate answer is because BTS, I believe, is from China and or Korea, wherever they are from, and um, they have to serve in the military. It's mandatory in their country. So some of the members were still in the military, and because of that, they all could not be together to perform. But in 2023, when I went to the Global Citizen Festival, Jungkook, who is, I believe, one of the lead singers of the group, he was able to perform at the Global Citizen Festival. He had just came out with a new album. I think it was called Seven, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. And he had a song with Lotto, and we were able to see him perform at the Global Citizen Festival. But just because he was there does not mean that all the other members of the group were available. So long story short, I wanted to propose to her at a BTS concert only because of her passion and her love for BTS. And I had told her this when we had broken up, the conversation of the breakup. I mentioned it to her, and I said to her, and I wish I never told her this because honestly it was pointless, but I just wanted to let her know, because if it ever made her think about anything, at least be like, wow, you know, I've never been proposed to, and this guy who wanted to propose to me in front of a group of people at a concert with my favorite band, my favorite group. So I was going to organize for Jungkook, who is her favorite, to be the one to do the honor. So I was going to ask them to have Ashley get on the stage and, you know, tell her, hey, your boyfriend told us that you're one of our biggest fans. Hey, something to, distract her, while I would get on the stage as well too, and I would, be on my knees, well, on one knee, and just wait for her to turn around. But, you know, somehow I wanted the crowd to not get too crazy. So if they did, what we were going to try to do was we were going to have BTS sing something to her like a cappella, just so that if the crowd started cheering, she would think that they were cheering because of the a cappella. But, in reality, I was going to be right behind her on one knee with the ring out, you know, waiting for her to turn around so that I can ask her, would you marry me? Um, it sounds like fantasy. It sounds like a beautiful dream and whatnot. But, I'm sad to say that, unfortunately, that um, plan that I had just never happened. And it didn't happen because, one, we broke up and we're never going to get back together. The past is the past. She's moving on. I eventually have to find my way to move on. I'm still on that path of resilience on my healing journey. But when pretty much they told me that they were not going to be able to um, perform, have a tour anytime soon in the next year and a half or so, I said, well, the plan is I still want to be able to propose to her next year, 2024, a year after us dating. For at first, when I spoke to about it with my therapist, with friends, they were like, hey, like, it's a little too soon. Like, don't you want to take some time before you propose to her? And I was like, well, I just want to show her that I really care about her. And I want to show her that I really, really want to be with her. And if I propose to her a year into us dating, I would be 38 years old. She would be turning 31. Um, you know, at least it will put into perspective that we could get married in the next few years. I wasn't planning to get married right away. Sometimes nowadays, a lot of people get engaged now, and it just means that the wedding is in a year, um, or 6 months from now, or something like that. I know a lot of my friends that have got engaged. They usually plan their wedding for that year, for the following year. Because she had some things going on career wise, I just wanted to get engaged with her, because she was going to be going away for this career change, for some training stuff. And, I just wanted her to have a part of, something to look forward to, and knowing like I could go away, go to this training, do what I need to do. But technically, at the end of the day, I'm an engaged woman, and my future husband's going to be waiting for me. Unfortunately, when we broke up, she felt that I just couldn't be there for her the way she wanted me to be. And, what breaks my heart about that is that she never really asked me. She just assumed that I was not going to be able to support her the way she wanted. And, sometimes you just have to ask, or you have to see it for yourself. You can't just assume that someone's not going to be there for you, you know, the way you expect them. It's just like with her. Like, I never knew what capacity she could be there for me. I could just ask her, or I can just see for myself. So when, bottom line, like I said, the plan A, which was to propose to her at a BTS concert, didn't seem realistic. I went with plan B. Plan B was, she's never been to Vegas, and I wanted to take her to Vegas so that we can celebrate her 31st birthday in November. And I was going to take her to a nice fancy dinner. It was just going to be me and her. I had thought about possibly, if things really, really were supposed to happen the way I had imagined and I had attempted to plan, I was going to try to get her mom out there. I was going to try to get her twin sister out there so that they could celebrate their birthday together. And, the twin sister's married, so I would have had the twin sister's partner most likely come out as well, too, because, I wasn't going to have both of the sisters celebrating their birthdays by themselves. I wanted her sister's partner to be out as well, too, with us. So I was going to arrange to fly out the mom, fly out the twin sister and her partner. And if it was just going to be me and her, then it was just going to be me and her. Right. But I was going to try to get her family out so that we could go to this dinner. And then we were going to have a very long dinner. And then because Vegas is West Coast time. So I was going to have this dinner like around 9:30 at night. If it was a big party, which could have been a party of 4 pretty much, actually a party of 5, because me, her mom, her sister, and her sister's partner, it would have been a party of 5. And it would take a little while for the food to be made and for the food to be served. Bottom line, I wanted her and her sister to blow out candles together. And then we were going to head back to our hotels, or, enjoy the strip, the LA, the Vegas strip, and eventually take her to the place that I had arranged to propose to her. So what I'm about to share with you all, it's going to sound like a little fairy tale, but it's exactly what I had in mind and what I had envisioned. So if I was going to have her family come out to be part of this, I was going to let at least someone know what was going to happen, just so that they could be prepared, and also kind of help a little bit, if that was possible for them to help. But if not, I was just going to keep it to myself and just surprise everyone with it. Um, it was a special moment, and it was going to be one of the most special moments of her life. So instead of her like FaceTiming her family to let them know she had just gotten engaged, if they could have just seen it themselves, it would have been more beautiful, right? Um, it would have helped because even though I had a photographer planned, which was going to be Diego, the guy who works with me, I was gonna have Diego, document it, record it, take pictures of it, and have the family shoot their photos, of her and her ring and whatnot. But if it was just gonna be me and her, so what was gonna happen was we were gonna have the dinner. After the dinner, it was time to, either enjoy the rest of the night on the strip or go back to our hotels because it was getting late and she probably would have been tired. And then I was gonna be like, okay, so of course I didn't want her to drive, and I was gonna detour our ride to our hotel to the spot where we were actually going to be. And then what was going to happen was I was going to take her somewhere, and I was going to say, listen, I know you've always wanted to be in Vegas. We're finally here. I hope you enjoyed your birthday dinner. I hope you had a great time tonight. But, I wanted to, before we went to bed, I just wanted to share something with you. And then I was going to tell her, like, pretty much our love story, how we met. You know, she's from Philadelphia. I'm from New York. We're in the city of, the city that they say is what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and Sin City. And I was going to say something to her, along the lines of, I have one more gift for you. And technically, it was going to be now November 20th, which is the next day. And we would have made 1 year and 4 months together, I believe. And because we started dating on the 20th of August. So every 20th of every month was going to be another month of our relationship together. And I was going to have a group that I reached out to on Instagram who does a cappella music. And I was going to have them perform at first Jay-Z and Beyonce's On the Run Part 2. And they were going to sing an a cappella. And then I was going to have her walk into a little maze where she was going to see nothing but flowers and beautiful things and a beautiful view of Vegas. And then eventually she was going to see the sign, "Would you marry me? Will you marry me?" And, she was probably going to get emotional, cry. Oh my God, I can't believe this. And then when she turned around, I was going to be right there waiting for her and praying that she would have said yes. Because listen, sometimes this happens. There has been proposals in the past where the woman was not ready to say yes. If she said yes, there was going to be a song performed for her. And it was a song that she liked. I'm not going to discuss which song that is, but they were going to perform a song that she liked, and I was going to have them play it with a violin, and we were going to tie the knot, and that was going to be that, and she was going to be an engaged woman. Like I said, today is October 25th, right? Friday. And folks, I'm doing my very best to cope with the fact that in about 2 weeks and a half, that date is coming up. And unfortunately, we're not going to be celebrating an engagement. So instead, November 21st will be 9 months that her and I have been broken up. And that's just the reality. That's just the truth. I didn't share this story with everyone for the first, 15 minutes of this podcast for any type of sympathy or to make anyone feel bad about the situation. It's just the truth. I'm living my truth. I'm living what is going on in my life at the moment, and this is what's happening. A few days ago, I was reflecting on, the death of my uncle and my aunt, my mom's older brother and older sister, who passed away October 20th. on Sunday. My uncle passed away in 2021 from a long battle of diabetes, and my aunt passed away a year after him, the same day, October 20th, from heartbreak syndrome, because she was, you know, unfortunately mourning and grieving still from my grandmother's death and my uncle's death, which was her mom and her brother. And heartbreak syndrome is real. Look it up. Ask a doctor. Ask someone that you know in the medical world, and they'll tell you. People sometimes pass away from grieving something for so long. And, you know, I just hope that that's not my case, that I don't pass away from suffering from this heartbreak, from not being able to marry the woman of my dreams and the woman who I thought was my soulmate and the woman who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. So, last thing I wanted to talk about, because I want to, you know, get out of this funk that I'm in right now and talk a little bit more positive. But before I can do that, I just wanted to address that while I was on in Atlanta, this is something I didn't talk about on the podcast because it happened after. I got to Atlanta on Friday. Saturday morning, I woke up. You know, Bad Blood was that evening. And Diego and I were in our hotel room. And, you know, normally first thing in the morning, Diego likes to go take a shower. But I like to brush. Sometimes I'll brush my teeth, then go have coffee. Or sometimes I'll have coffee first and then brush my teeth. So I normally like to have coffee first thing in the morning. So I'll take my glass of water with my I take a supplement every morning called lysine. It's an amino acid, and I take it on an empty stomach. So I said to Diego, let's go grab some coffee. And then of course, you could take a shower to cool down the caffeine. And Diego's like, no, let me take a shower. So I said, okay, I'll meet you downstairs. So we were standing at a Marriott Marquis, downtown Atlanta, Peachtree. And I went downstairs to get us coffee at a Starbucks. And Diego eventually came and joined me. And we heard a loud bang at some point, like a loud, just, thunderous bang. And we didn't know what it was at first. And I heard it and I was like, what was that? And it actually happened above us. And, Diego didn't really react. He was like in his own world. Shortly after that, we went back to hotel rooms. I decided to shower to get my day started so that we could head out to the Bad Blood Superstore to go check out the merch that they had. And I had asked Diego to go downstairs and do some B-roll for our documentary. Diego came back upstairs shortly after that to inform me that, unfortunately, they had told any guests that were in the hotel lobby to please go back into their room because something had happened at the hotel. When we got back downstairs, he had been describing to me, hey, I noticed there was yellow tape in certain areas. Usually yellow tape, that means there was some type of crime scene, right? So I said to Diego, well, probably a crime scene. But if it was a crime scene, I think we would have known because I think it would have been pretty obvious. And Diego's like, well, I don't know. There was a ambulance outside. And I said, really? You saw an ambulance outside of the hotel? He says, yep. So anyways, as we're going downstairs, I said to him, maybe the yellow tape is just there for protocol or something, but maybe, there was a lot of things going on in Atlanta, Bad Blood. There was a concert the night before, a big concert, from one of the most legendary Latino artists. His name is Marco Antonio Solis from a old school band called Los Pookies. They were pretty much the Spanish version of the Bee Gees. And, if you really want to put it that way, they were like the Spanish version of the Beatles. And, we saw so many people coming out of that concert. It was insane. So, that was going on. And there was conventions left to right. There was like a, what do you call that? there's like this brand out there. I can't get the name. I can't get the name out right now, but there's like this brand that people have been trying for years that apparently Herbalife. There you go, Herbalife. It's still early in the morning, so I just had my coffee and I don't know what, I'm having issues processing things right now. Plus, there's like a million things going on in my head right now, right? Because, like I said, I'm excited for the Yankees. Game 1 of the World Series tonight, WWE SmackDown tonight at the Barclays Center. So, I had told Diego, there's a possibility they might just be a celebrity on this floor where they put the tape at, and they're just making it seem like it's a crime scene, but in reality, there might be just a celebrity on the floor, and they just want to be as protective as possible. When I was actually at the Superstore with Diego doing some content, I ran into a friend. His name is Chris. And, he told me what had happened. And he was staying at the same hotel as me. And I said to him, really? And I couldn't believe it. And then my friend Carlos also had confirmed what had happened. And Carlos says I was there. And what turned out to what actually happened was somebody committed suicide. And when I heard about that, I was like, no, that's just insane. So, folks, I was staying on the 37th floor of the Marriott Marquis. The guy who committed suicide that day, unfortunately, was on the 40th. So he was 3 floors above me. And even though I was at the Starbucks when this happened, he had landed on something that they called the balcony. And what's so crazy about that is that the day before, when I was doing the podcast episode with Danny, I was looking for a location in the hotel that I could shoot the podcast at. And they had offered at first the balcony. Reason why we didn't do the balcony is because it looked too loungy. And there was going to be a lot of noise. You could hear the elevators going up and down, and you could hear like the ambiance and whatnot. And I just wanted to make sure that we were in an area that was as quiet and secluded as possible. So we didn't go with that. So from the very beginning, when they said that to me, that, there was someone who unfortunately took their own life that Saturday morning, even though I had the best time on my trip, all I kept thinking about was that person. And I said, I can't believe it. Why did this person commit suicide? How old was he? What happened? What was the backstory? And I remember reading somewhere on the internet, but I don't know how true this is, but something on the internet said that apparently the guy was about to get evicted from his apartment. And I remember saying, like, listen, our lives are worth way more than rent at an apartment or, whatever. And someone said to me, look, in Atlanta, some people's mentality, unfortunately, is like that. It's not like New York City where, and you would think New York City is more of a place where you would say, listen, if you cannot pay your rent in New York, you probably would have more chances of committing suicide, right? But the thing is, what they say is unfortunately, the way society is in Atlanta, a lot of people don't have resources like we do in New York City. And that causes people sometimes to feel lost. Reason why I'm sharing this with you all is because this story, this incident actually shook me. And, when I was on my way back to New York, when my trip was over, I left on Sunday night. I took the Amtrak to New York. That was 18 hours. From Atlanta to New York City, 18 hours. I was on the Amtrak. And I wanted to do a road trip. The longest I've ever traveled was 7 hours. And that was from Bakersfield, California to San Francisco, California. That's how big California is. But it was 18 hours. And, you go through South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. Or is there something before Virginia? No, Virginia, Washington, Baltimore, Delaware, Philadelphia, Jersey, and then New York. I was sleeping most of my trip. And it is now Monday, but it's like Monday, like early morning. I want to say like around 4 or 5 o'clock. And I was sleeping. Like I was just sleeping on the train. I was not even awake. I thought I would be on my laptop, catching up on things, watching some of my favorite shows. I didn't do any of that. I was just sleeping. And normally I don't like sleeping on something that's not like, if it's not a bed, I can't sleep. But I managed to sleep. I managed to get rest. So at some point I wake up, I look at my watch. It's early morning, Monday, and the train is just stuck somewhere. And it turns out that the train was stuck somewhere, I believe in North Carolina, but I can't remember exactly where, some field area. And I heard an announcement that the reason why we were stuck and the reason why we were waiting is because there was a car on the tracks. I'm tired. I'm waking up. I'm half asleep. And I'm like, huh? Car on the tracks. So I'm looking around and I'm like, I started to realize that the area that we were in was strictly a train track area for trains. It wasn't an area where cars could drive around. It wasn't one of those areas where, that sign comes up and comes down and the cars have to wait for the train to go by. It was actually a farmed area where no cars drive by. Turns out that the person that was on the tracks was someone who was trying to commit suicide as well. And I said to myself, what is going on? Less than 48 hours ago, someone committed suicide at the hotel that I was staying in. And now someone in another state on my way home is trying to commit suicide. So apparently this person, this person parked their car on the tracks and, I would think that maybe just somebody abandoned their car and left. That wasn't the case. This person actually parked their car on the tracks and wanted the train to come full speed and just take them. Thankfully, the cops came because they had made the announcement, we're waiting for this vehicle to be removed off the tracks. And I said to myself, like, no, maybe the car's person broke down and they broke down on the tracks. But as much as I was trying to justify it or trying to look at a different reason, the reason was they literally were trying to commit suicide. So now I'm thinking to myself, what is the message behind all of this? And it's crazy because look what happened. 8 months ago, when my ex and I broke up, initially I thought about her words when she said something to me like, when you spend time away from someone, you think to yourself, it gives you time to think, what do you miss about this person? What does this person add to your life? What does this person subtract? And when she said to me, I don't see what you're adding. And this was in January, she said this. This is about 2 months before we broke up. But when we broke up, that's all I kept thinking about. I couldn't add value to her life. She didn't feel that I was adding value, even though I felt that I was doing things that was making me add value to her. Like I was there for her mentally, emotionally. I did things for her. And some people may look at this and be like, well, it was the bare minimum. But it's like, we only dated for 6 months. I did things for her like she was my wife. I did things for her like she was like, we were together for a long time. I did so much for her in 6 months. So because of that, I felt betrayed. And, I'm going to bring up the resentment part of this. And, I started to doubt myself. And I said, look, this is like another failed relationship. I'm 38 years old. Well, at the time I was 37. But I'm like, I'm a 37-year-old man. I'm going to be 40 in a few years. And here's another failed relationship. here's another person that's going to walk out of my life and not come back, like most of them. And I started to think, what if it's time for me to just go? It wouldn't make a difference. Everybody will still live their life. It seems like I'm not adding value to anyone's life, anyways, to begin with. So I may have said this before because I on the podcast, because I do say it a lot in person. Every time that someone commits suicide, it hits home because it makes me feel like that could have been me. That guy in Atlanta, that could have been me. Because when I went to Atlanta, I was a little sad. You know, the last time I had gotten on a plane was in January to go to Tampa. And it was the day after my ex first brought up to my attention that she was having doubts about our relationship. So I knew that I was going to be filming content for the Resilient project. So that was another thing that had me, like feeling a certain way. So with that being said, all I want to share with you all is the fact that, folks, I say this one all the time. I usually say this during the end of my podcast episodes. One life to live, live it well. Please count your blessings and not your problems. And, last month was Suicide Prevention Month. A few weeks ago was Mental Health Awareness Day. Folks, please, there's a new hotline out there called the 988 hotline. Reach out to them. If you're feeling alone, please reach out to someone. Suicide is not the answer. I remember a few years ago, I saw this quote and it said, suicide is the only option. It's not. Please don't think that way. And my heart goes out to everyone that's been affected by this. So with that being said, now I want to talk about the topic of this episode. And again, we're going to talk about resentment during the healing stage. So let's understand resentment. What makes resentment such a difficult emotion to manage? I believe resentment is tough to manage because it often lingers beneath the surface, growing with time if not addressed. It's a blend of anger, disappointment, and frustration that can feel justified, making it hard to let go. And, I always wanted to know, when it comes to resentment, how does it differ from grief and anger? And through most of the things I've been through in my life, I've been able to realize that grief is tied to loss. And anger is often a short-term reaction to injustice. Resentment, however, is a more prolonged emotion that builds when unresolved frustrations accumulate over time. And with the emotional impact of resentment, you can only ask yourself, can resentment impact your ability to trust again? And the answer to that is yes. Holding on to resentment can make it difficult to trust others, as unresolved pain can cause someone to assume similar outcomes in future relationships. I feel like I've been through that before. I feel like I've been a victim of that. I have had resentment in the past towards my mom, towards old friends, people that came into my life and at one point did something to hurt me, and I didn't know how to forgive them, or I didn't know how to move on from it. So I started to resent them. And then I realized that I took this resentment that came in the form of trauma into next relationships. And, you know, you want to ask yourself, what are the signs that resentment is affecting your well-being? And the common signs include feeling drained, excessive rumination, feeling irritated all the time, and distancing yourself from meaningful relationships, self-sabotage in that matter. Resentment may also contribute to stress-related physical symptoms like headaches and something that I deal with a lot called insomnia. So I want to share with you all steps to acknowledge and process resentment. And how do you process resentment in a healthy way? So we need to start by identifying the source of our resentment, reflect on our emotions, and express them through journaling or talking to a trusted person like a therapist, your best friend, your significant other, your sibling, but someone. Because learning to emphasize with others' perspectives can ease the resentment. Sometimes we don't even know that we're being resentful towards people. We don't know that. And sometimes it's our attitude, it's the way we act towards that person. We don't realize that we're resenting them. During this breakup, I have realized how much I have resented my ex in many occasions. And I'm like, no, I don't want to resent her. I don't want to resent her, please. Because I've also been able to realize, like, as time has gone by, like the role that I played. And it's like, look, like, I'm not innocent in this situation. Yeah, was I wronged for, how the things I did for her? Yes. But ultimately, I don't think I made things easy. I didn't make things easier throughout the time. Sometimes sometimes she understood where I was coming from, and then sometimes she didn't, So I've been thinking to myself throughout this course of time, these 8 months, if it's possible to let go without receiving closure. And I'm like, look, I believe that while closure helps, it isn't always available. Letting go involves accepting what cannot be changed and choosing peace for yourself, even in the absence of apologies or resolutions. So I keep thinking to myself, like, will I ever get closure? Will she ever? I thought the closure was when we broke up. That conversation, because of how I was feeling. Because look, ever since that conversation we had in January, from that point on, the distance just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I want to say the first few weeks of January were okay. The distancing started and we were still okay. But by the time February came around, Valentine's Day was coming, and we were supposed to be celebrating 6 months together. Or was it 5 months? Yeah, 6 months together. Things were just like, man, I wish that I could describe. Okay, I'll say this. What I saw was our love dying and being put to rest. I saw the entire process. I saw the love laying on its deathbed. I saw the love that we had get placed on the deathbed. And I was looking at it, and I was trying to find ways of taking it off the deathbed and saying, you're not ready for this. But instead, I saw it lay on the deathbed. I saw it get worse and worse and worse. I saw the love crying for help, crying for salvation, and me not doing anything to really stop it from happening, not doing anything to prevent it, which I regret because I just couldn't talk to her. But a part of me says you should have just taken the time to be like, listen, you're one of the most difficult people to communicate with, but I need to talk to you. And when I went to her house the day before Valentine's Day, which is the last day I saw her, I should have taken that moment to actually apologize to her and even though I had apologized to her on the phone, I should have just, I should have not left her house that night without speaking to her about anything. Instead, I was just enjoying the moment, not realizing it was the last time, and just watching her open up her Valentine's Day gifts. But what I should have done was I did give her a card, which was a Valentine's Day card. And I should have said, look, even though you didn't want to open up the card and read it, because she did, she looked at the card, she saw that it was a lot of stuff, and she immediately closed it. I should have been like, listen, I care about you. I love you. I miss you. I haven't seen you in a long time. This is the first time I see you this year, because the last time I had seen her was Christmas. And then 2024, the first time I saw her was that day. And it was the last time I saw her. And I should have just addressed everything and tried to fix that problem. But instead, our love was left on that deathbed. And then eventually it was the very last moments. And it was when that hourglass broke that I looked it up and I said, what does it mean when an hourglass breaks and shatters? And it said, you're running out of time or you ran out of time. So when I went back to that deathbed, the death was already dying. It was off of life support. It died. And then I watched it transition. And then I watched it be put into a casket. The grieving part of it, which would be the funeral. The burial part of it. When she started doing the things that she did by deleting all of our pictures, deleting all the stuff that referenced our relationship. And then just the memories and the self-reflecting and everything else. Yeah. So with that being said, I had spoken to you guys on episode 11 about accountability. So let's talk about the accountability as a path to healing. And how can we make accountability shift our perspective on past events? Well, taking accountability helps us regain control over our healing journey by acknowledging our role in the situation. It allows us to see where changes can be made to prevent similar experiences in the future. And the last thing I want to touch on this subject is forgiveness. Is forgiveness necessary for closure? Or what are the other ways, if there are other ways? Forgiveness is beneficial, but not the only path to closure. Acceptance, acknowledging what happened without letting it define you, can also offer emotional freedom and closure. We got to work on this resentment thing. And I think therapy helps. Sometimes we're resenting the people we love. We're resenting our parents for the neglection. If we had parents that neglected us, we resent our exes. Uh, like in this case, I've resented my ex a few times. Sometimes we resent our partners because they cheated on us, because they did something that broke our heart and we're still with them. Resentment is a killer. It's resentment is like holding a grudge. Let's work on not being resentful, and let's worry about not holding a grudge and trying to make more peace with things. I apologize in advance if this episode seems a little bit all over the place, but I'm not going to make any excuses, but I will have to say that I am a little caffeinated because I just had a nice cup of coffee that I made. But I hope that this episode, where I covered resentment during the healing stage, can be something that can help and can be used as a reference or a guide. I do want to get a little bit more into what I mentioned to you all before about the trip that I had in Atlanta, but I want to talk about that maybe later on. I want to take this time one more time to thank Danny Ocean for being DJ Danny Ocean for being on the podcast, episode 12. Danny was technically the third guest. And I look forward to everybody else that's going to be on the podcast. Folks, I do want to remind you all that our merch is already available. For those that watch the podcast on YouTube, there's a link right here, foryourwear.com. And when you go on the website, just type in the Resilience Pod and you'll see our merch. And for every purchase that you make, a percentage will go to a charity. So I want to give a shout out to my friend Blue for putting that together, for selling the Resilient merch. As you may have seen already on, my social media photos and whatnot, people have been wearing the t-shirts, people have been wearing the jackets. I've been wearing my jacket. And I'm just so thankful. It's been a long journey. And before I go, I just want to share something with everyone. And what I want to share with you all is the message to the world. And my message to the world is, when you start to heal from trauma, the process might make you feel like this is how your life will always be. But that's not the case. Your mind and body are working together again. And it takes time. Folks, please don't lose hope. You are brave. Remember that. So, this concludes episode 13 of the Resilient Podcast. Again, I am your host, Rob Aurelius. And I look forward to episode 14. But for now, once again, thank you for tuning in. Make sure that you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at TheResilientPod. And make sure you check out our merch at foryourwear.com. Thank you for joining, and I will see you all soon. God bless, always, and peace.